Well, hello, everybody. This is Melissa with the Fully Mindful. And today I'm excited to introduce a friend and fellow law school graduate, Shari Lane. Shari has worn many hats, still does, from practicing law and teaching middle school Latin to advocating for the unsheltered and immigrants, as well as for the environment. And she's also been a lawyer for many years. And it's in the last several years that she's more fully embraced her calling as a writer, though she's always been one, moving from Portland to Lopez Island and getting to focus more on what she's most passionate about, stories that build bridges and reveal our shared humanity. She's the managing editor of Shark Reef Literary Magazine and hosts Word! Exclamation point, an open mic for local writers. Her debut novel for adults, by the way, she's also written a young adult book titled The Unfairy Tale, but her debut novel for adults is titled Too Over Easy All Day Long, just released this year. It is a beautifully crafted tale of mystery, transformation, redemption, and more. And I'm thrilled to have Shari here to talk about the journey from law to literature, from Portland to island life, and of course, the deeper themes of her book that resonate so much in today's world. So welcome today, Shari. It's nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you too.
Yeah, and I did kind of hint at this, that we were law school comrades. We were in the
Okay.
same class at Lewis and Clark Law School, which seems a very long time ago, does it not?
Yes, it does. Time just whoosh. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I do the math, it's not quite 2.5 decades ago.
Really?
It's 2+ decades ago that
That's
we started our journey there. And you actually did practice law solely
yeah.
for quite a long time, correct?
I did. I did. I
Yeah.
worked for a couple of different firms and also practiced on my own and worked for the Auditor of Rubber Industries in their civil rights division. So
Yeah.
lots of different adventures during that time as well.
And for the listeners, I'm just providing background. Shari is one of those people that I always admired in law school and beyond, whose career I followed closely because she's done such great work. And I also now admire her for her writing abilities. So it's kind of a cool journey to see from afar. I wish it had been closer, but it's been cool
Yeah.
to see it from afar. And yeah, so how have you made that journey from a full-time lawyer to an almost, we'll talk more about that, an almost full-time writer? What was that transition like for you?
It was really tough, and I will say if the two-word answer is not gracefully. I don't have a good role model for that, but it had been growing on me over quite a while of it being an active lawyer. Although I've had many wonderful experiences and worked with many wonderful people and have continue to have great respect for the practice of law, it was not a good fit for me. And that actually kind of played into the kind of things that I write. One of the things that I struggled with as a lawyer is you may get advocacy, which of course we have an absolute ethical and legal obligation to provide. And I then found myself thinking if really there was a way that both of the parties in any dispute could bridge those divides between them and see things from each other's perspectives and find a solution that works for everybody. I mean, obviously in criminal, that's something that's going to happen, but it definitely made it clear that Brody was not a great fit.
I've often struggled. I too respect the law. I'm still practicing, and that has been a, a major hurdle for me, which is odd because I was a prosecutor for a very long time. And yet, I can tell you there are moments, there are times when those bridges can be built and crossed, and there is something akin to restorative justice that can be available. It's maybe not exactly what that means as you and I might have studied it, but it is there. But, it is hard. And I think the way society and our culture continues to transform to be more divided and divisive, it's even more difficult to get there sometimes. And you and I practiced in Oregon, which is like the friendly state for lawyers
Absolutely.
compared to what I understand other states like New York or maybe Illinois might be. So if we were feeling it, then I can only imagine other lawyers feel it all over this country. Um, and yeah, so I can fully relate. And so, but there's a big thing that has to happen, right? To be okay, I don't this isn't a good fit for me, but I've spent all this time and energy and money to go to school, and there's this sort of identity that I've taken on. Perhaps maybe you didn't, but I sure have. This identity as lawyer. And then you make this jump to like, you know, it's not only not a fit, I'm just not going to make it my full-time deal. How, if you don't mind sharing that, like, how did you get from A to B or A to Z? I'm really going to say.
So it really started with kind of a crisis. I was working late one night, and I did. I definitely had that identity. This is what I do. This is who I am. I felt like I was good at it. But I was working on a matter and felt like I was having chest pain and went to the emergency room, and they said, your heart is fine. I'm in a lot of stress. And I just realized, yes, I am under a lot of stress, and it is this constant tug of war internally about feeling like I'm not providing what I am skilled to do, which is building bridges, having people come together as opposed to the advocacy. And that launched into some time with an incredible therapist who, came about, can you envision a different one? What that look like and what would that take? I was then a pretty action-oriented person, and I didn't want to just get to the root of why I was feeling that way. I wanted to talk about, okay, well, what happened next? How do I take this information and make a better life for myself? My family, and married in it. At the time when I first started talking about this, my husband was not thrilled with the idea, or I was still thinking about, what if I stopped earning this money that is pretty critical to our lifestyle? But the more we talked about it, the more that I think just it became obvious that this was something that probably should have happened a long time ago. And then in the middle of all that came COVID, and we were talking about making some really serious life change. And I should back up and just say that my mom, my only mom for most of my life, passed away at the end of 2019. And so all of these transitions happened in 2020. I had decided to take some time off and kind of figure out what I needed to do. And then COVID hit, and we started going, what if we were to imagine a completely different life? We always wanted to move to Lopez Island. We've been coming here for 20 years and just loved it, and knew that that was where we wanted to retire. I thought, what if we don't like them? It was a joint decision, but like I said, I wouldn't call it graceful. It was sort of a start and stop, and
Yeah, and it sounds like even though you're a very action-oriented person, it still took some time, right? You had to process what was going on and come to this realization and then negotiate with your husband on it. It sounds like he became fully supportive of it, of course, but it maybe initially was a little like, I don't know about this.
yeah.
And so he had to process it. And then you
Mhm.
made this joint decision to move to Lopez Island, which maybe tell us a little bit about Lopez Island. There might be some people listening who are like, where's that? What's that place
Yeah.
about?
So Lopez Island is one of the San Juan Islands in Northwest Washington. All of the San Juan Islands are beautiful. Two of the islands are much more particular, I would say, with Linder and Forketh Island and San Juan Island itself. Have a lot more going on. This may be a bit of an exaggeration, but there are maybe more sheep and cows than humans on Lopez Island, and that's what we love. It
Yeah.
is natural beauty here. Variously is breathtaking. The people are friendly. It's a community that really thrives on and invite creative people, musicians, writers, artists of all kinds, visual artists. And it just felt like home almost from the moment we stepped onto the island for the first time. It's just a really wonderful, unique place.
That sounds amazing. And is the weather any better than the rest of Washington, northwestern Washington?
It is a little bit actually. We are in the rain shadow, and so the mountains shield us from the sort of constant rain that you get in areas like Seattle. If
Yeah.
you need so much fun, I mean, I don't know if you're ever watching Spring for Seattle,
Yes.
then the line it rains something like 90% of the year. That rain. So,
It really, really
yeah,
does. I mean, I
yeah,
often feel like it does here in Portland, Oregon as well, but it's not actually accurate, but it does feel. I remember when I moved here from the Bay Area
mhm.
and the first year of law school, I moved here for law school, and I remember it was like the early days of the internet, and I was on AOL trying to figure out
Yeah.
where else do I go? This is much
Oh,
rain.
Nathan.
I've since gotten very used to it and actually kind of have grown to love it in a weird sort of way. It's very moody. It is very
Yes.
conducive to creativity and introspection. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cup of coffee and tea and cookies, and I write all day.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
So yeah, so what does it look like for you now that I know that you're still wearing a number of hats in addition to being a writer. I understand that you work with your husband's solo law firm. Is it a solo law firm?
Well, it was solo until October 1st. We just hired another attorney who was working hetero office in Seattle and really
Oh, and
excited.
she neighbor leap to Lopez Island too.
Oh, no, she's working.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
working remotely. Okay. Well, maybe one day she'll be swayed by the island's life like you have been. So, well, that's exciting. And you're actually working with him doing not lawyer work, but assisting him in the operation of the law firm in addition to your writing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I try to write a little bit every day, and then on the weekends I write a lot. But that doesn't always work out. But that is for me the goal. And we actually made a very concerted decision at the beginning when we first opened in 2021, January 2021, that we were going to try to have a 75% maximum office time. And again, it doesn't always work out. And then, I go, Larry, you do what you need to do when you need to do it. And if someone's supporting a law that's been running a law, that I also end up sometimes doing what needs to be done, whatever it needs to be done. But that has been kind of a guiding principle, and we share that even as we hire folks. We think work-life balance is incredibly important. We don't ask for or expect a 40-hour work week. We don't stick it on ourselves. So that has burned out some time for me to do writing, and I don't know, actually for my husband to do a lot more, and which is nice.
Yes, you mentioned earlier before we hopped on to this recording that your husband has lots of guitars.
Yeah, so we're storing actually. There are a number of people who are escape the cold winter and they go someplace warm for a good 6 months out of the year, and a couple of them actually of our big friends that we've made here on the island have more than 20 guitars of various types. And so when they go, they don't want to leave them on an empty house. So we are now
Yeah.
storing a huge collection of guitars to recently give it on.
Oh, but that's great. I mean, and I love that you and your husband focus on that work-life balance, and I'm guessing that that wasn't really present before you made this transition to Lopez Island.
No, it definitely wasn't. And I mean, just going back to seeing the princess on the phone, and it is one of the things that most people here are very understanding about, because they're also sort of trying to think of a way to make sure that this incredible beauty and community, it doesn't slip by. And a lot of people have that same focus on, we got to get work done, we got to earn a living, and we want to make sure that we are being present and loving the life that we have.
And I really do love that. I mean that. It's not just the work-life balance, but I really like the message here, how you've been able to do writing and working in a different capacity, although I'm sure you would love to be writing 100% of the time. Because I think so often we hear from people out there in the world, well, if you're not doing it 100%, you're not doing it. If you don't write every day, you're not a writer, and a bunch of BS, in my opinion.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
I like to hear like an actual writer, a published author, like yourself who is able to do both, right? You're writing as much as you can, as much as there's time and space available and energy for that. But it's hopefully I'm just making a guess here. You're not beating yourself up on the days that you're not able to do as much as you would like.
Absolutely. And I would say it's not even just that I'm not beating myself up. I'm trying not to feel disappointed in myself and in life. It's this is my life right now. It's not. I don't have the option to just write all that as much as I enjoy that. So I'm just trying to appreciate the moments that I do get, and I have a lot more of those now than I did here in 2 years.
Yes, yeah, just being in the present and having appreciation or gratitude for what you do have is such a lovely, lovely thing. Well, speaking of writing, I have your book here, your latest book here, Too Over Easy All Day Long. And by the way, how long did it take you to write this beautiful piece of literature?
I, I actually started 10 years ago. So it took a long time. It's been sort of fits and starts. Found an editor who loved it, not an editor working with a publishing company or literary agency, but just a writing editor, and hired her. And she said, I'm really going to get this out here. You're very passionate about it. And I tried, got rejected, got some really nice rejections. We love this, but so set it up for a long time. And then Jane and they writing are both really talented writers, and they said the same thing. You gotta get this out there. Charming down, got some more rejection, came out, and then just decided that I would start sending it to small presses rather than a big original agency. That three invitations to provide a full manuscript within a whole week. So it felt like, okay, now it's seasoned enough, and I got sure what it's actually finding a home. And the editor that press that I chose just for passionate about it and about the actual word and message of the story. So felt like it.
It was a good fit. Yeah. And I'll tell you, when I'm not quite done the book, I'll confess I'm a very slow reader, always have been, despite the fact that I have my degree in English literature. I have always been a very slow reader. I read how I hear it, as if it were out loud, which just gives it a different dimension. And I thought that's how everybody read. But when I was talking with my husband many years ago, he kind of looked at me sideways. I said, that's how I read. And I said, you don't read that way? And he said, no. It turns out other people read faster, and they don't exactly read that way. But one of the things that it has given me an appreciation of is the use of language, right? I hear it as if it's being spoken out loud. So I love that. So it won't take me 10 years to get through your book. It's actually going much faster than I because it's such a good book. And when I knew that you had published this, and I thought, I mean, it looks good. It's good. I wonder if it's really good. It's really, really good. It's just, I mean, from the moment I opened it and just started reading it, was just drew me in. The characters, I feel like I'm in love with all of the characters in different ways, even the ones I don't like. And so I'm wondering, some people write books based on character, some people on stories, some people just write and they don't know where it comes from. What is it for you? How did this story come to you?
Thank you so much. It makes me so happy to hear that you really were drawn in and you're enjoying it. The answer is a little bit woo-woo. I have a bit for her. I have always felt like characters come to me and say, I have a story. It needs to be shared. Will you write it down? And there have been times when I have rejected it, especially if it's a character that is it's going to be your main character in the story or novel, and it is just too dark. I need to be able to fall in love with that person in their story arc in order to do it. I don't know to write about it. And there have been times when I thought, oh, here's a character that seems to be calling on me, and I just thought, yeah, do it. So this particular story, I had read an article, and I can't find it again, an article about a judge. She did something similar There was a very wealthy, very powerful corporate executive who was found to do some sort of minimum wage work. And as I recall, the judge said something like, you need to know what it feels like to not have that power that allows you to hurt other people. It wasn't as dramatic as what is within this story, but I just felt like the character Jarvis came to me and said, I think you need to write this story down. And then, then it's not like I just am a scribe, but there are lots of themes that are rolling around in my brain and my heart at any given time. And certainly during that time, as I'm still actively practicing law and I'm still thinking about our justice system is better than the alternative, and it is still very limited. And I wanted to explore whether there was a way that someone who has received a criminal sentence, as a criminal judgment, could actually begin to make amends, begin to see what the world from the perspective of people who he's hurt. And also, it seems to me that we are constantly building on or stereotypes and our assumptions of people who are different from us live and think and feel and why they make the decisions they do. And it seems to me that the only way to get beyond that is to experience the world through their eyes. And there's actually a bunch of research that says that reading fiction builds empathy, and it does so in a way that is safe. Quick shout out for my writing coach and editor, Rains Dixon, and her writing coach partner, Debbie Carell. They both talked about that when you read fiction or creative memoir for that matter, you can safely experience a different perspective. Because if I'm standing across the panel from someone who is stridently advocating for a position that I find important or that makes me very different from anything I've ever felt or believed, I have to confront them. I have to respond or walk away. But if I'm just reading about a character coming to that place, it's a much safer way to experience their world and their perspective. So with all of those things together, that brought me to Over Easy all day long.
Yes. And for those listening, I'm just going to let you know this story arc is really interesting because it is about somebody, in part, about somebody who has always had a lot of privilege, lives in the city in New York, and kind of never had to do anything for himself, is the way that I see him as you've described him, and finds himself in rural Eastern Oregon in a very small town, and a not real town, but a very small town that could be real in Eastern Oregon, where people are really, really different and have very different experiences for him. And he ends up as I think a dishwasher, as well as wearing a couple other hats in this very small town diner and living in a hotel. And the characters are just so very interesting. And you end up throwing a murder in there too. And it works. And it's, it has struck me. I think you've accomplished, or at least my read is that you've accomplished what you set out to do in terms of these ideas of empathy and redemption and building bridges, because that's exactly what I think all of the characters so far are doing, except perhaps whoever commits the murder. Who knows? That remains to be seen. You never know. And one of the things I also really like that you do is, because of your legal experience, when the narrator's describing what his sentence is, and it is, as a lawyer, I tell you, is a very outlandish, unusual sentence. And you say that, like, this is, one of the characters, I think it's Giles's lawyer, says, like, this, you can't do this, we'll appeal or whatever. And I thought, oh, good. So it's not like one of the experiences that I've had watching as television series or reading other books that, just let it ride, right? Something kind of outrageous. So I appreciated that as a lawyer, that nod to this being very, I've seen crazier things happen, and I'm heartened that you actually read an article that it did happen. And It's fun as somebody who has spent some time in Eastern Oregon, in a rural part of this state, to see. I think you've just captured them really well. How did you go about capturing this imaginary town and these characters from a very real part of Oregon in terms of Eastern Oregon? How did you capture them?
So I spent a lot of my growing up in a small town, worked in basically a stereotype kind of diner during part of my school. Um, and I feel like one of the gifts that writers have, if they take the time, is to see people, to see, you know, as their emotions are playing out on their faces and in their language. I think it's just something that becomes incorporated into my emotional vocabulary. So just the experience of growing up in a small town and working in a round diner like the one in Monterey, Pittsfield town. And I had definitely spent a little bit of time in Eastern Oregon for various things. I have lived in Eastern Oregon. But again, I lived in a small town. There's a certain sort of character that a small town tends to have, a certain sort of grace that people give to each other that they might not ordinarily if people who are on the other side of whatever decisions they made or opinions they may have. And there's no sort of sense that there's no fixing problems because they're so internal and so locked into how we operate as a community. So, we're the corrupt sheriff. There's often a sense in those smaller communities that there's nothing we can do. We just live with it and hope we don't run afoul of it. And
I wonder, you mentioned this, and I'm familiar with that research that has concluded that reading fiction makes us more empathetic because it's more approachable. The experience of other characters, other viewpoints is more approachable. In some sense, that was a goal of yours. Is that right?
yes,
Okay.
and each of the characters is struggling with their own problems, their own need for, I guess you call it redemption, not to in a religious sense. You've got someone who's walked in an incredibly unhealthy relationship. You've got someone who had her whole life set out before her, and the college student found out that she's pregnant, and the pregnancy was just not part of the plan. You certainly got she's now Tony trying to figure out which world does he belong in. Is it possible to live in this world and then go back to the other one, or is he going to have to make a more drastic change? You've got the crook who's hanging from a decision he made decades ago. And then you've got a young woman who longs to get away from this small town and what she feels is the sort of thankful and fear. But also that's really close time. So each of them are struggling with their own sense of what is my ultimate purpose in life, and can I get there, or am I secure in this same pattern forever?
Oh my gosh, it's like a metaphor for life, right?
That's that thing.
I mean, regardless of where we are, right? Like even your decision in being in law, it's the same struggle. Is this what my lot is in life, to be stressed and unhappy and not have this be a fit? Or is there something else for me, something else that is possible? And I can see that. And yes, all of these characters are struggling in their own way. Do you have a favorite character?
I do, but although it's not everybody else tells me their favorite character is Walt the cook. Yeah, I even put an insight around like that. And how we all love the curmudgeon because the curmudgeon's not that much fun to be. But my favorite character is Nancy. I just feel like she's a survivor, and she's also a person who just manages to find happiness or contentment in spite of the fact that she's overworked, obviously underpaid because she's always taking in people who need help and giving them a job, which means she's going to be taking home less money. She's, like I said, stuck in a terribly unhealthy relationship. And yet, she just manages to keep on going and not be dragged down by everything that could make her depressed and give up and stop caring. So manages to be generous for you.
Yeah, and for those who are listening and kind of getting intrigued by the book, I hope she is the owner of the small town diner.
Yes.
And she's quite a spitfire in addition to all,
Yes.
which is another reason to really like her. But she's not. None of these characters are one-dimensional by any stretch. They are multidimensional, and they have things that you can like about them and things that you can maybe not like it quite as much. Things that you can understand, things that you wish you understood a little bit more just from, a human level. And so I really appreciate the fact that they're multidimensional. They're not just one way or another. They're complicated.
Yes.
So I would love it if you're willing. Do you have maybe a page or so that you would like to share with us? I'd love to hear what you would like to share if you have something.
Okay. Is our main character's first day on the job. And he's walking into the diner, not knowing what to expect, and completely out of his element. Nancy led him back to the kitchen, which was now a scene of chaos unlike any he ever experienced. A tall, grizzled man was standing at one of the wide stainless steel counters, peeling onions and beating them into a food processor. A giant bowl with an equally giant whisk held eggs ready for scrambling, a pool of boulder eyeballs floating in egg white goo. Broken shells were scattered like bones around the bowl, most of them oozing and dripping onto the counter. A dozen half-empty ketchup bottles stood open, and a large container of ketchup was upended into a bottle perched in the mouth of one of the smaller bottles, both of them precariously balanced against the wall. Another enormous bowl held the beginnings of biscuits, judging by the groups of modeled best biscuit mix standing beside the bowl, and the carcasses of what must have been 50 oranges were piled next to a massive juicer. I heard, the man grunted before Nancy could introduce them. You're Tony, you're gonna wash dishes. I'm Walt, and I don't like chitch. Walt's long white hair was standing up in every direction, and his long yellow-white beard was bound into a sort of ponytail with kitten twine. Walt had mean eyes, Giles decided. Walt was wearing ragged fatigue and ancient army boots with the sole visibly coming apart from the shoe on her right foot. Nancy spoke loudly. First aid and CPR training, Bright, after we cleaned up from lunch. That means you too, Tony, she said. That means me too, Tony, he thought. And just like that, he was Tony. For the rest of the day, he only had to remind himself again once. When he called Caroline that night, it would be, "Hi, honey, it's Tony." Giles was gone, and there was only Tony. It was a relief, really. Tony hadn't destroyed his career. Tony hadn't hurt anyone. Tony didn't have to worry about anything except washing dishes and filling salt and pepper shakers, and apparently taking a refresher course in first aid and CPR. Redemption at sounding thought it out, he said, and then he realized he'd said it aloud. Nancy looked at him as if he was insane and maybe contagious. Walt stopped beating the eggs, set the whisk down on the counter, unfortunately, and slowly came around the counter toward Tony. Tony blinked, deeply afraid Walt was going to punch him. Walt extended his hand, encased in a clear plastic food service glove. "Welcome, brother," he said.
Love it. It's such a beautiful introduction to the characters and the themes of Bridges, redemption. It's interesting to hear it after I've read it a while ago, not a while ago, but recently. And, the welcome brother just kind of got me because, that's kind of what they really are. And
Yes.
without really knowing it, when being as about as different as they could possibly be. And I love the images in the kitchen, having worked in the restaurant industry. Spot on. It really is. And what about that? What made you choose that to read?
I just love the introduction of Walt and Tony. I feel like Walt has a huge role to play in Tony's transformation. And Tony actually has a role to play in Walt's. And I think that their meeting and Tony realizing, okay, this is actually my moment of redemption. And hearing from Walt's welcome brother there, Walt kind of gets it, even from that very first moment. I thought that was it's just a really important moment, at least in my.
I think so too. It's very moving, especially from, having been a little bit further down the road in the book to reread that, to rehear that. The couple paragraphs that I wanted to read, I have different reasons for reading it. And I don't know what it's like to have your words read back to you. So I guess we'll see what that's like. But um, here it is. It says, he leans against the cherry sign and looks into the distance. Through the shimmering haze, the result of high desert sun and the dust generated by miles of crops and livestock, he can see the blue mountains, craggy, snow-capped peak after peak. It is breathtakingly beautiful and simultaneously sere and bleak to a man whose horizons normally include forests of skyscrapers and fields of taxis and herds of humans. Somewhere in his consciousness, he knows he should enjoy the lovely scenery, find pleasure in the moment, and count his blessings that he is not a forgotten drug addict moldering in a dusty grave. But he is not up to the task. The mountains glower at him disapprovingly, and he turns away. If even the very stones of the earth find him deficient, what hope is there for him? Then again, perhaps they are just mouths of stone, and he is imagining that they care whether one mewling man learns to appreciate his brief moment under the sun. What's that like to hear your own words?
You'd love to hear your head.
Yes, and the reason I chose that, the language is just beautiful, right? I wanted people to understand that the way that you write is there are many talented mystery writers out there. It is one of my favorite genres, if not my favorite. And so take this with a grain of salt. Sometimes mystery writers don't do what you did here and what you do throughout the book, which is this really beautiful articulation of scenery as well as internal thought and having those reflect one another, which is what I think you did here. And so I wanted to give people a chance to see how this book is written, which is so beautifully. So I'm so glad that you wrote it. And then you didn't give up. That's the other message. I mean, how many times did you say that you put this down and you had been rejected, even nicely, that rejection until you found the right fit? And I love that message of hope that sometimes we just need to find the right fit.
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Speaking of which, you're pretty connected there on Lopez Island in the few short years that you've lived there. What other things are you doing there on Lopez Island?
I am one of the trustees on the library board of trustees. From we don't sound like heck for believing. I don't think it is. I think we have the world's best library. We just have an amazing, amazing staff. And it's just a lovely authority, and that's where I live. So being connected with us is really fun. I also hosted an interview for writers, for local writers that makes me feel on. And that has just been such a source of joy and fun and a great chance to get to know a wide variety of writers. We have writers who are poets. We have writers who write nonfiction, pretty well-known and accomplished writers on the island. And it's just marvelous to get them all together with people who are just starting to explore what it feels like to write. And it's just a great way to be involved. The other thing is I'm sort of tangentially involved in American music, including this year. We're putting a whole group of musicians put on a sing-along version of a Streaming Your Old Brother Where, which was an absolute blast. These are really
I
fun.
bet.
But that's about it for things they do on the island. In addition to working and writing.
Oh, is that all? Yeah. So where do you host the open mic?
At the library.
At the library.
Okay.
Okay.
Meeting room. Yeah.
That's great. I once, a million years ago at Berkeley for undergrad, I once participated in a poetry slam, but it was not at a library. It was not even at the university. It was at a kind of notorious pub. Get over. We did a poetry slam. I would imagine you probably get a little bit more work done.
Yes.
In the quiet of the library than we did. Poetry slam at a pub. I think that's lovely. And if I lived on Lopez Island, I would be motivated to try to write again and come to your open mic. So, what do you think is next for you, if anything? Just continuing your beautiful life on Lopez Island, juggling all that you do, being a part of the community, writing. Anything else on the horizon?
I don't have any big life changes. I am working on a sequel to Two Raise All Day Long, about page 100, though. Get through the first version, do a bunch of revisions, and then think if there's something interesting in publishing it. It's interesting that you were talking about, or you were glad that, or I did at least make a nod to that this was pretty unusual and probably not even likely to happen in the real world that criminal done. There's more discussion on that when Tony ends up having to have a hearing with the sentencing judge, and because of how this came to be and um, what with the current situation. Because it's only the end of November when a book ends, and you start out nourish it's not going to hit that up there.
Right.
It's just there. I continue to write short stories and submit them to literary magazines. I got another book that I had finished last year, and I'm sending that out to literary agents and publishing companies. So lots more writing. I have a 2-year-old grandson who is the light of my life and unfortunately lives in Boston. I spend a lot of time flying back and forth to Boston.
Yes.
And my son lives in Portland, so I have a lot of time coming to that time of him. Very full life, but no big life changes on the horizon.
Yes, that sounds like a big, happy, full life. And of course, none of it without any stress. There's a little bit to have, but it does sound like a bit of a dream from this side of things. And I'm excited to hear that you're writing a sequel and that you have other things that you're continuing to engage in creatively. My hope is, of course, the two continue on and on and on and on. And so, to that end, people might be interested in finding more about you, finding the book, maybe reading your young adult book too. I'm now interested in that. And where we can find out what you're up to next. Where can people find you?
You can always find me on the website. It's ever so hard to remember. It's www.sharilane.com. So, SHARILANE. And I got information about my other writing. I do a monthly newsletter that is combination of what's going on with the book tour and reviews of books I read recently and random thought from life.
Your newsletters are very interesting. I like the newsletter. They're not like, just so people know, if you sign up for the newsletter, it's not the self-promotional thing. It's not. It's your observations. It's a lot of really interesting material. It is worth it.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. Well, anything that we didn't talk about that you were hoping we would get to?
I guess the only thing that I would say is a lot of the sort of mantras that I've been doing after I go to the tour is I often, if there's time, I will spend some time during what I've been referring to as preaching. And again, not ready to sort of poetical, but just talking to people about the importance of sharing their own personal life stories with helping them, kids and their grandkids and their neighbors and their friends and their parents and, the grocery store clerk. And they're checking out because that is how we get beyond the constant conflict. And it's some kind of conflict where are going to be resolved just by sharing our stories and our perspectives. So I don't know, handy if we were just share our stories. We can do it in writing. We can do it orally. We just need to be talking to each other through social media, not through comment on a newspaper, but actually interacting and sharing. Well, here's who I am and why I made the decision I made.
I think that's such a beautiful observation and encouragement because it's true. We live in a very polarized, divisive culture right now. Although I was listening to a recent podcast on that Dr. Laurie Santos hosts, and it was about this, and it was citing some recent research into we think we're a lot more opposite and divided and polarized than we actually are. and asked about specific subjects that we would think would be very difficult for people to agree on. It turns out we agree a whole lot more than we think we do, surprisingly so. It was, 70%, 80%, 90%, those kinds of numbers on really difficult subjects, and that surprised me. And they also talked about, I think it was a Stanford experiment where they were going to have two people who were, let's say on opposite aisles of the political aisle, and they were going to talk online. Oh my God, right? They were going to have, a 10-minute conversation. I mean, the difference was it was at least live, right? And they were going to have a moderator because they were going to talk about really difficult subjects like climate change, like abortion, like gun rights, that sort of thing. And they had a group of people who it was really interesting. They asked them to predict how many times they thought the mediator was going to have to intervene. And I think it was something like 50%, or it was they said a high percent, let's 25 to 50%. And it turned out the mediators had to intervene 0% of the time. And it was isn't that crazy? Right. When people were actually talking with each other and, like you said, sharing their stories, not talking at each other, but talking with one another, preferably on their stories. There was one that I remember where he was a gay man and he was pro-gun rights because, and he explained this to the person who was very not necessarily against guns, but wanted a lot of regulation. And he said that because of his status and where he lived, he felt very threatened. And so he felt better when and safer when he had a gun. And the other person really understood that. And maybe they still didn't agree, but they understood one another. And I think that's what you're getting at, right? Is this, yeah, yeah, this understanding of one another, that we're not some mean monster on the other side. Although there are some of us, maybe, I don't know. But most of the time, if we share openly, honestly, who we are, it's an opportunity to understand, to connect in a way that I think is, like you said, it's really warranted right now and really needed right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly how I feel. I really think your written stories can contribute to that first.
Yes.
You're just talking to each other and sharing those stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In whatever way. And I love that you've gotten that in Lopez Island, but you can get it if you're in Manhattan. You can get it if you're in Chicago. You can get it if you're in San Francisco or Los Angeles. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be in, a town like Mont Bailey in rural Oregon, and you can still connect with your fellow humans. So I love that message. Thank you for that. And thank you so much for indulging me in this beautiful conversation, at least for me, about your book, about your life, about how you found this meaning and purpose in your life in the way that you have, and the beauty that you have found with your husband and your family and your creative projects. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been really, really lovely.
Yeah. And can't wait for your next book to come out and so that we can all enjoy it. So thank you.
Thank you.